Well, I feel a bit old today, but I'm here, so. Let me start with one single and simple question. Have you ever thought about the universe? Of course you have, and so have I. And they actually paying me for doing that. Off the records, let me freely speak about my universe, how I can picture my universe. I like to imagine the universe like a huge body with no muscles, no nerves, no bones. But it does have neurons, messengers that brings information. What information where? To his mind. And I like to imagine ourselves as the mind of the universe, a sharp mind that actually took about 13.8 billions of years to build up. And what is the most powerful thing is that we have knowledge, we have the way to build instruments, but it is quite recent, so it happened 400 years ago. And today, we are able to detect the messenger of the universe. So we evolved. And so happened to my talk 2 days ago, and also the title of my talk evolved. The real question here is, what does evolution means to you? I will give you my perspective, but still, what matters the most is your perspective. Let me start with a personal story, a personal fact. I spent 5 summers of my life, and my wife is still mad at it, in Princeton. And there, one day, I met a cosmologist, a woman, a very, very smart cosmologist. And she was the wife of John Bacall, Professor John Bacall, that actually was my inspiration for my entire career in physics. John Bacall was the guy who predicted the neutrinos flux from the sun. Inside the sun you have a core, and the core released neutrinos. And this guy, through his imagination, books, chats with colleagues, come up with an incredible model, an incredibly accurate model. Ladies and gentlemen, please let me introduce to you Professor Bacall.
I was called right after the announcement was made by someone from the New York Times and asked how I felt. And without thinking, I said, I feel like dancing. I'm so happy. And the one thing that my kids kept sending each other emails about all week was, did you see where it said in the New York Times that Dad felt like dancing? They kept making fun of me about that, but I was deliriously happy. It was, it was like for 3 decades, people had been pointing at this guy and saying, this is the guy that wrongly calculated the flux of neutrinos from the sun. And suddenly, that wasn't so. And it was like a person who'd been sentenced for some heinous crime, and then a DNA test is made, and it's found that he isn't guilty. And that's exactly the way I felt.
John Bacall. Radiation is everywhere, coming from the ground. Ourselves, we are a radioactive source because we have potassium-40 inside, and we emit about 5,000 particles per second. And then we have radiation coming from above. Particles accelerated by catastrophic mechanism in outer space can enter the atmosphere and produce secondary particles. These particles travels toward the Earth, but we are lucky because we have the atmosphere. So a large fraction of these particles are absorbed by the atmosphere. But still there is a small component that can get to the Earth. So everywhere in the world, we can measure 100 to 200 muons per square meter per second. And then I got an idea. Evolution means adaptation. Life adapted to an environment full of radiation. So maybe cosmic rays played a role in the evolution of life. So I got this fantastic idea from a TEDx talk to the Nobel Prize. Long journey, but maybe it's short now. And so I Googled it, and I found out that already 55 years ago, people investigated this possibility. The problem is how I can assess the effect of cosmic rays on living bodies, because there is no hardware button that I can push and power off the cosmic rays. But we are smart. We are the mind of the universe, so we are sharp and smart. And over the years, we build large underground infrastructure. And in my former life, I used to work in one lab like that. That, by the way, was the largest and the most advanced lab at the time. In this environment, you can get the cosmic silent environment you want. So it's your hardware button that almost completely stop the flux of cosmic ray. So you can perform your experiment. Problem is, we have no direct observation, correlation that cosmic rays plays a role in the evolution of life. Biology and physics, like wife and husband, long journey together, beautiful moments, but sometimes bad moments and fights. These two guys, a physicist, Lord Kelvin, the father of the second law of the thermodynamics, and Charles Darwin, the father of the evolution, got almost divorced. Because the physicist said, look, I have a wonderful theory that can model the Earth. And I computed that the Earth's age is about 100 millions of years. Look, my friend, your theory is beautiful, it's brilliant. Problem is the evolution, it's much longer time, so it's also wrong. And actually they got into these fights. And Lord Kelvin, the physicist, was wrong because he didn't take into account the fact that the Earth is radioactive. The most powerful source of energy and heat on Earth is due to the radioactivity. Lord Kelvin was also notorious for giving bold statements. There is nothing new to be discovered in physics now. All that remains is more and more precise measurement. I wrote probably because it's friend of a friend that heard a friend telling a story. So, well, it didn't go like that. This guy, Einstein, I put Einstein because it's really evocative. So it's the most famous scientist ever. The guy who triggered a revolution, not even an evolution. But I picked him because he's the guy who truly believed that imagination is the real engine of progress and science. Imagination is way better than the perfect knowledge of a single fact. 20th century was a century in which we had an incredible number of advancements. The seeds of new evolution were spread all around in any kind of discipline. But in the 30s, it happened something that really put in danger the physics. This something was the anomalous decay of carbon-14. So today we know that carbon-14 is per se interesting because it's basically the tool we have to do the dating of historical findings. At that time, the carbon-14 was believed to decay into two pieces, into bodies. Nitrogen plus an electron. Now, if you have a satellite that blows up into pieces and you know the mass of each single fragment, you can exactly predict the energy of each fragment. So they did the experiment. They knew the mass of the electron. They predicted the energy of the electron, and so they expected a given value. Problem was that this value was actually could be anything in a spectrum. When you observe something like that in a two-body decay, you are simply observing the violation of the energy conservation that is actually bad for physics because it's a law written in stone. There was a guy a couple of years later that actually found the solution. Wolfgang Pauli, an Austrian physicist, proposed a new particle in the decay. So the decay becomes a three-body decay, and for a three-body decay, the energy spectrum is perfectly fine. And then he said, so this particle doesn't have an electric charge, maybe has a very small mass, and does not interact with the matter, more or less at all. The guy was right. Pauli had the right idea. So this particle that today we call it neutrino, it's actually a neutral particle. The mass, it does have a mass, but is very small, and it interacts very, very weakly with the matter. To give you the sense of what I'm saying, the first neutrino detection happened 26 years after the prediction of this particle. And these two guys, Rains and Cowan, built a detector next by a nuclear reactor because they already knew that nuclear plants would emit a lot of neutrinos. Now my question, what would be the most powerful and clean nuclear reactor ever? Well, the answer is the sun. The sun is a gigantic ball of nuclear fire with a super dense and super hot core in which all the nuclear reactions take place. The products of these nuclear reactions are basically its energy, its lights and neutrinos. But there is one number that actually still drives me crazy. It's the number of neutrinos that we can measure on Earth. 60 billion neutrinos per square centimeter per second. It means that on top of my thumb, I have every second 60 billions of neutrinos. So it's an incredible number. Guess who predicted this number? Was John Bacall. But physics is physics. You have the prediction, you need the proof. John Bacall has a friend, Raymond Davis, was a radiochemist and also a physicist, and they decided to build a detector able to detect solar neutrinos. They did the experiment. The prediction was 1.5 neutrinos per day, but actually they measured 0.5 neutrinos per day. So they found this discrepancy called solar neutrino problem. The real problem was all the experiments that were starting at the time detected exactly the same amount, 0.5 neutrinos per day, or something like that. So the scientific community addressed this discrepancy to a miscalculation done by John Bacall. That is actually was the guy who miscalculated the neutrino flux. But something happened in 2001. There was a confirmation of an incredible property of neutrino happening on neutrino only, a quantum mechanic effect for which a neutrino that is born in a given species can turn in another species. So solar neutrinos became something else. This is why the detector didn't detect all the solar neutrino predicts. So the neutrino was guilty the entire time of this story, and John Bacall was found innocent. I see the evolution when the people's imagination leads the way to build new places, to build new progress, knowledge. I saw the evolution when I was at school, when I learned the science language, that is the truly international, beyond the barriers way of speaking. So with science, we can gather together people and create a better life. I'm fully aware that today I'm speaking to the new generation of scientists, engineers, doctors, artists, economists. Don't be worried to be rewarded by super important prize or for not feeling like the new Einsteins. Use your imagination, whatever role you play in your life. And before I leave the conclusion of my story, in 2002, Raymond Davis, John Bacall's partner, won the Nobel Prize, but John Bacall didn't. But still, it remains my superhero. Thanks.